Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise in support of H.R. 1, the Lower Energy Cost Act. I'm proud of the work that we're doing here to reduce the burden of high energy costs facing Americans and to strengthen our national security. I'm also pleased that my bill to repeal the EPA's $27 billion slush fund is included in H.R. 1. It's an important step to right the numerous wrongs in the misnamed Inflation Reduction Act. I've said many times that the war in Ukraine didn't create the energy crisis, it exposed it. If we learn nothing else from the energy crisis in Europe, it's that we should never make our nation or our allies dependent on an adversarial nation to meet our energy needs. Sadly, the Biden administration's attacks on American hydrocarbon energy make us more dependent on China, who is an adversary, making this not only an economic security issue, but a national security issue as well, Mr. Speaker. Thankfully, the Lower Energy Cost Act puts us on a path to energy security, improves our economy, and strengthens our national security. Additionally, Americans have been facing record levels of inflation due to the policies of the Biden administration. Energy costs are one of the biggest drivers of inflation. Everything we use or consume has an energy cost. On day one, President Biden set the course for higher energy costs and higher inflation. When he came into office, inflation was 1.87%. Today, it's over 6.5% because of reckless spending, increases in massive regulatory costs, and higher energy costs. The misnamed Inflation Reduction Act contributed to these problems by establishing the so-called Greenhouse Reduction Fund, which is nothing more than a $27 billion slush fund for green advocacy groups. The reality is energy prices have risen so much during Joe Biden's presidency that nearly 20 million households are now behind on their household utility bills. If my colleagues really wanted to help the American people, they would do everything they could to help reduce energy costs. Polling indicates, and this might be interesting to my colleagues, polling indicates that a majority of voters support the Lower Energy Cost Act, including 56% of self-identified liberals and 69% of moderates. For these reasons, I encourage all my colleagues to support unleashing our domestic energy production to reduce the cost of living for all Americans, strengthening our national security, and making energy independent again. I urge my colleagues to support H.R. 1. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield back.